Dober dan, dobro jutro, pozdravljeni. Pozdravljeni na Mednarodni PANTHEON konferenci. Za vse vas se po nekaj letih ponovno zbiramo v Portorožu, na biseru slovenske obale, v tej čudoviti dvorani Evropa. Gosti koji ste iz Adriatic regije, sada možete staviti slušalice, da ćete slušati simultani prevod. Hvala. Konferenca, na kateri se bomo vsi družili danes in jutri, je nekaj prav posebnega. Zakaj? Organiziramo jo ob 20. obletnici podjetja Datalab in jaz menim, da si vsi tukaj v dvorani zaslužimo en velik aplavz. Hvala vsem za res odlično sodelovanje in hvala, ker ste si vzeli čas in ste danes tukaj z nami. Sedaj bi pa z res velikim veseljem na oder povabila našega glavnega izvršnega direktorja podjetja Datalab, gospoda Morena Rodmana. Pozdravljen. Pozdravljen, Moreno, predajam ti mikrofon. Izvoli.
Dame in gospodje, prisrčen pozdrav prav vsem skupaj želim. Veliko čast in veselje mi je, ko pogledam okoli sebe, predvsem popredse, in lahko z zadovoljstvom rečem, uspelo nam je uresničiti sanje izpred 20 let. Uspelo nam je ustvariti pomembno IT podjetje, ki temelji na domačem znanju, ki se postavlja po robu in tekmuje z multinacionalkami. Podjetje, ki na tako zahtevnem področju, kot je naše, igra zelo pomembno vlogo že 20 leto. Podjetje, ki je prav v letošnjem letu slavilo 50 000 uporabnika in ne nazadnje podjetje, ki kotira na Ljubljanski borzi kot delniška družba. Spominjam se prve Datalab konference prav tu v Portorožu, sedaj že davnega leta 2004, ko nas je peščica ljudi z veliko navdiha, nadurnega in nočnega dela organizirala prav ta tovrstni dogodek. Prepričan sem, da nisem edini v tem dvorani, ki se tega spominja. Lepo in predvsem koristno nam je bilo tudi tedaj in upam in vem, da bo danes tudi tako. Veliko stvari se je tedaj spremenilo, tako v naših mikroekonomskih, kot tudi makroekonomskih okoljih. Danes vsi vemo, da je edina konstanta ta, da smo priča stalnim spremembam. Prav v tej množici sprememb pa je v našem ekosistemu ena stvar ostala ista. In to je naše poslanstvo. Vse skozi se moramo zavedati, da je naša branža nasploh le orodje, s katerim naj bi vi, dragi naši uporabniki, bolje in učinkoviteje opravljali svojo dejavnost. Da smo tu zato, da vam pomagamo biti boljši, učinkovitejši, hitrejši, cenejši in ne nazadnje uspešnejši od vaše konkurence. Tudi v bodoče se bomo v naši skupini tega zavedali in še bolj strmeli k cilju zadovoljevanja vaših pričakovanj. Albert Einstein je poleg mnogih svojih izrekov nekoč povedal tudi tole. Življenje je kot vožnja s kolesom. Vkolikor želimo ohraniti ravnotežje, se moramo pomikati naprej. V Datalabu se tega zelo zavedamo in vemo, da je za podjetja in njihove produkte popolnoma ista zgodba. Torej, moramo iti naprej, moramo ustvarjati nove produkte, osvajati nova tržišča in se soočati z globalizacijo ter konsolidacijo na že osvojenih tržiščih. Zato nameravamo v našem srednjeročnem obdobju narediti sledeče. Še dodatno izboljšati in optimizirati našo podporo. Prejeti na novo platformo in ustvariti PANTHEON, ki bo lahko učinkovito in v skladu z najnovejšimi trendi opravljal skupaj z nami svoje poslanstvo še naslednjih 20 let. Prejeti na način sodobne, aktivne prodaje. Zavzeti še vsaj 2 nova tržišča, ki pa bosta večja od obstoječih. Na to se že kar skrbno pripravljamo kar nekaj časa. S temi posegi moramo priti tudi do tega, da podvojimo našo realizacijo, da s tem razveselimo tudi naše lastnike in postanemo na tak način zanimivi tudi za strateške vlagatelje. Vsekakor se upravičeno poraja vprašanje, kako bomo pa to dosegli. V množici stvari, ki jih je potrebno postoriti, bi poudaril dve ključne zadevi. Vsekakor je to naš produkt Pantheon na prvem mestu, pa nič manj pomembna je tudi ekipa, torej ljudje, ki delamo z njim. Tako bojo nove verzije Pantheona v bodoče srednjeročnem obdobju zasnovane na novi tehnologiji, vsebovale bodo vso znanje, ki je bilo vgrajeno vanj že v teh 20 letih. To so prav vaše izkušnje, vaše zahteve po izboljšavi, vaše optimizacije delovnih procesov ter ogromno našega dela in idej. Ravno tako bo Pantheon postal do uporabnika prijaznejši, enostavnejši ter dostopnejši. Možno ga bo enostavnejše integrirati z ostalimi IT rešitvami, ki jih danes napredni uporabnik dnevno uporablja. Prepričan sem, da bo tak Pantheon ostal konkurenčen vsem ostalim ERP-om še kar veliko časa. Toda za doseči vaše zadovoljstvo, dragi gosti, je potrebna tudi ekipa. Ekipa, ki bo novim tehnologijam in izzivom sodobnega časa kos, ekipa, ki bo motivirana, ki bo gojila timski duh. Ter prav tu vidim ključno vlogo sebe in svojih najožjih sodelavcev, ki smo tu prav zato, da omogočimo tej ekipi vse potrebno za upravljanje svojega poslanstva. Izkoristil bi to priložnost, bolj enkratno, kot karkoli drugega, da se vam opravičim, vkolikor je v teh letih prišlo do kakšnih nevšečnosti. Saj veste, kdor dela, tudi greši. V bodoče se bomo še bolj potrudili in naučili poslušati, predvsem pa slišati vaše sugestije in konstruktivne kritike. Sprejemali jih bomo kot darilo in jih seveda tudi na to poservisirali. Veselili se bomo tudi vaših pohval, saj menim, da že dejstvo, da smo tu 20 let, je trditev tudi ta, da smo naredili tudi kaj dobrega, oziroma ogromno dobrega. Datalab želi in bo tudi tokrat med prvimi ERP sistemi, ki bodo obrali nove trende in izzive, katerih nekaj bomo skupaj s sodelavci predstavili danes tu na tej konferenci. Z obljubo, da bo leteh še ogromno, tudi v bodoče se vam prav vsem ponovno iz srca zahvaljujem za dosedanje in seveda tudi bodoče sodelovanje. Lepo se imejte in veliko koristnih informacij vam želim. Ne bo jih malo. Hvala lepa.
Hvala lepa, gospod Rodman, za uvodne in spodbudne besede. Hvala lepa za vaš aplavz. Sedaj pa mi dovolite, da vam predstavim prav posebnega gosta naše konference, gospoda Joea Pepparda. Gospod Joe Peppard je eden izmed vodilnih strokovnjakov na področju digitalizacije, svetovalec, profesor na ESMT Berlin in avtor številnih strokovnih člankov ter knjig. Z veseljem ga sedaj vabim na oder. Mr. Peppard, please join me on the stage. Big applause, please, for our guest. Hello, Joe.
Hello.
Are you tired from yesterday?
I'm not so much tired from yesterday. I've just arrived in from Australia, so I'm a little bit jet lagged, but I'm okay.
Okay, good. Mr. Peppard, before you came to the conference, we talked about the digital transformation of companies and your most recent researches. You mentioned that many companies are just giving the illusion of being digital. Can you explain to us why companies are struggling with their digital transformation, please?
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. As you will see from the title, what I do want to explore this morning with you is this, what I'm seeing in my work, my research, my consulting work, is that a lot of companies are talking about digital. A lot of companies have digital transformation initiatives. But actually, what I'm actually seeing in many of them is that they're giving the illusion of being digital. And what I want to try then to share with you then is maybe how you might overcome that. Now, I know you're going to hear some great presentations over the next 2 days, and really all I want to do is just going to share with you for the next 45 minutes some of my research, some of the work that I've been doing with companies, and I have sort of been involved in this space, this digital space, for over 30 years. Now, for some of you might say, but hang on, digital is not that old. Well, you know, those of us that have been long enough in the industry, we know that the IT industry is great at presenting old concepts, old ideas as something new. Yeah, you know, we talk today about big data. Why do we talk about big data today and not 10, 15, 20 years ago? Well, actually we did, but we just called it data. And what the big just signifies is that there's a lot more data out there and a lot more data that's available. And again, I know with a lot of the work that my clients are doing around analytics. And again, you might get the impression that somehow analytics is something new. But if you go all the way back to the 1970s, we had this concept of decision support systems. So even though the technology back then was pretty primitive, was pretty limited, we did see leading companies try to embrace those capabilities to help them better understand customers, what we now call today insight, and to use the capabilities of technologies to help them better make decisions. Everybody seems to be talking about user experience today. And many of you remember the concept of user friendliness. We tend not to talk about that. And indeed, if you go right the way back to the 60s and 70s, there was an emerging school that came out of it, the intersection between psychology, computer science, information technology, called human-computer interaction. So 50 years ago, we recognized that getting the interface, getting how people, how users, how customers interacted with computers was pretty important. And today, it's still a challenge. So, you know, why then are we talking about digital today? And why am I here talking about digital transformation? I do believe there are some fundamental differences. And I think the first one is real time. You know, speed. You know, we have to make decisions and we have to react rapidly today. Whereas in the past, we may have had some time to mull over data, to mull over decisions. Very often today, we've got to make them in real time. And this is why, you know, in a digital world and for digital transformation and to be a digital company, why agility is so important. The ability to respond quickly to changes in the marketplace, changes, for example, in your customer base. Obviously, data, there is a hell of a lot of data that is available. And that in itself throws up tremendous opportunities. Connectivity. Just think how easy it is today to connect to other people, but also to connect to other devices and things of all types. And again, the opportunities that throws up, particularly in a business terms around, you know, new business models, for example. And then, of course, we have the cloud. And I think the cloud as a technology has been transformational. And I know a lot of you here come from small companies, but just think of the capability that cloud technology now provides you with. You know, you don't have to go out and buy expensive servers, for example, buy expensive software. So it's fundamentally changed that dynamic between OpEx and CapEx. So let me just kind of move on a little bit. And this is what I mean by this illusion of being digital. What I often refer to as digital lipstick. So it's a sort of the company that launches a Facebook page, and suddenly now they say, we're now a digital company. Or makes a decision that they're now going to accept the bitcoins. And suddenly they say, now we're a digital company. This is sort of giving the illusion of being digital. Digital is a lot more than that. And I will explore some elements of digital, and I'm sure you will hear a lot more about digital over the next 2 days. But I think it's important to understand where we're starting from. And what I would try to illustrate on the slide on the screen is that, you know, some companies were born digital. So they got a heavily dependent on technology. Companies like Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Alibaba, Salesforce.com, etc., etc. But there are a lot of other companies that were born analog. And over the years have looked to embrace technology to either improve the efficiency of their operations, to help them make better decisions, and as they move into the future, to help them compete against companies that actually see themselves as being digital companies. So for example, if we look at a company like Visa, I would imagine that in your wallets, a lot of you would have a Visa credit card, and you would probably consider Visa as a credit card company. That may be so, but they don't. Visa see themselves as a technology company, because when they look out at their competitors, the likes of Stripe, for example, the likes of PayPal, the likes of Square, these are technology companies that have grown up digital, that have grown up using data. A company like Amazon is a retailer, and I know some of you come from the retail industry, but again, Amazon is a technology company. And obviously we've seen the strides and the impact that Amazon has had in respect of the retail industry over the last 20 years. So companies have a particular position on this chart between being established analog and being born digital. So, you know, even a software product company like Microsoft, when Microsoft started out in the 70s and 80s, they weren't a digital company. How did they distribute their product? On disk. So there was a physical element. And of course, there was no cloud. So that impacted in terms of their business model, their licensing model. So it's been quite a big transition for Microsoft, for Oracle, and some of the older technology companies that were not born digital to actually move themselves up for the likes of, let's say, Microsoft to compete against Salesforce, for example. And then other companies then are positioned at various locations along that dichotomy. I think that the challenge is, in terms of digital transformation, is for an established company, is to move up and become more like born digital companies, particularly when they are now your competitors, particularly when we now do business in an increasingly digital world. I've been tracking GE for many, many years. They've recently changed their CEO, Jeff Immelt, stepped down after 15 years. And 2 years ago, this is what he said in his letter to shareholders. He said, you know, you go to bed an industrial company, you wake up in the morning a software company. We believe that every industrial company will become a software company. Now, if I was to ask you this morning, which company in Europe is the biggest software company? Most of you would probably respond SAP. It's not SAP, it's Siemens. In terms of number of computer scientists, number of software engineers employed. Siemens is the biggest software company in Europe. Yet you might consider Siemens as being an industrial product company. Yes, there is industrial, it does manufacture industrial products and sell industrial products, but software plays a critical role in what they now sell. And it's not so much the software, it's the data and how they're using that data in order to facilitate the creation of new business models. I also like Jeff Immelt's view on the digital journey that he took GE on. So he was he started off when he left college in GE, worked his way up. So as the digital movement begun, as he looked to transform digital from that traditional industrial company to being more like a tech company, you know, this is an interview he gave last year where he recognized, you know, this is something that I got wrong. I thought it was all about technology. I thought if we hired a couple of thousand people, if we upgraded our software, things like that, I was wrong. Product managers have to be different. Salespeople have to be different. On-site support has to be different. We had to drill and change a lot about the company. And I think, again, my research and the work that I'm doing with companies of all sizes really highlights that, you know, investments in digital are less about investments in technology than they are about investments in change. And that might be hard to believe because we're talking about digital, we're talking about technology. But let me say that again. Investments in digital are less about investments in technology than they are about investments in change. Because it's very, very difficult to adopt your operating model. So, you know, two great examples, Blockbuster, Borders. You know, Borders, for example, you know, long-established book retailer, been around for many, many decades. New competitor in the form of Amazon comes about in the mid-1990s. Yet Borders somehow couldn't embrace digital. And 10 years later, went out of business. Similarly, Blockbuster, video rental business, again, couldn't compete against the likes of Netflix. And it's not as if Netflix was always a streaming company. No, Netflix was a direct competitor of Blockbuster in the early days. You know, they were in the video rental business. But they transitioned as technology moved. So today, you know, we know Netflix is not just in terms of streaming, but it's also now producing its own content. Okay, so again, a relatively young company that has managed to pivot a number of occasions over a very, very short period of time. And this is really what digital is all about. I mentioned change. And I think if we look at all of the research, and particularly research that's looking at why companies are struggling in relation to their digital initiatives, particularly in generating the expected business outcomes, the number one issue by far is culture and mindset. And that's the big challenge, is how do you change people's culture, the organizational culture, the mindset of your employees to embrace what is necessary to compete in a digital world. So for example, we know that experimentation and being agile are critical attributes of competing in a digital world. Now, for a lot of employees and a lot of companies, this is not something that, you know, they have been familiar with during their career. So getting them to change their mindset, to see the world in a different way, to see data, to embrace experimentation, is a big challenge. And of course, if you're going to embrace experimentation, innovation, that's going to demand taking risks. And of course, for a lot of organizations, taking risks is something that you typically don't do. But yet, when you look at some of the, the great technology companies, the Amazons of this world, the Alphabets of this world, they are every single day, they are experimenting, they're taking risks, and they know some of what they are investing in is not going to pay off. But they do know then that from that learning, they will generate opportunities that will spur future growth. So to kind of help you on your digital journey, what I want to present this morning specifically are two things. The first thing I want to do is sort of give you a takeaway. And that's a tool to help you map out your digital initiative. And then the second thing I want to do is I want to look at the different pathways to digital transformation. So from my research and the research that I'm doing with some colleagues in the US, we've identified a number of pathways that organizations can take in order to transform themselves. And in particular, what we've done is we've identified the capabilities that they need to develop. So I will share some of the early findings from that research, which is currently ongoing. So let me come to the first question and ask you whether or not you think that is possible. This is an advertisement that ran in most of the media in Europe, in the US a number of years ago, from Oracle. This is a cutting from the front of the Financial Times. And what they're offering is, start today and have global CRM in 90 days. And I know some of you are thinking about, CRM solutions. So just think about it. You buy the Oracle product, and by the time you come back from your skiing holiday in February, all your problems with customer management, et cetera, will have disappeared. That's the proposition. So is this misleading advertising, or is it possible? Just think about it. Is it misleading, or is it possible? Okay, I won't ask you what your opinion is, but most of you will probably recognize that it may be possible to roll out globally the technology in 90 days. And actually, I used this slide with a group from Oracle a short while ago, and they say to me, actually it is misleading because we now have this cloud offering and we can do it in 19 days, okay? So they may be able to roll out the technology, but what they won't be able to do is instigate all of the organizational changes, the new processes, the training, new procedures, etc., etc., etc. That's going to take time. So whereas in the past, with older technology, it might have taken to deploy CRM on-premise, 18 months, 2 years, and at the same time, you would probably, in some organizations, might have had a change management program. Today, the problem is not with technology, and we still haven't figured out how do you compress an 18-month, a 2-year change management program down to 19 days. It's probably not even possible. So technology really is not the limiter. So when we think about this value for money from digital investments, what I see companies again today focusing in on is on the IT cost. And if there's a feeling that the company is spending too much on technology and not getting the benefits, typically the finance director says, well, let's cut IT spend. I would argue maybe that's not the problem. Maybe the problem is not how much you're spending on IT. Maybe you need to spend more on IT. The problem is elsewhere. I believe that the problem of most companies is the company's inability to realize benefits from that spend. So it's not how much it's spending, it's its ability to realize the benefits from that spend. Because particularly in the minds of business managers, they have what I would consider this magic bullet thesis, that somehow IT has the solution to the problem. So if it's a problem in retail, if it's a glitch in the supply chain, somehow IT can fire a bullet at the problem and it disappears. So if it's analytics, for example, dealing with big data, you've got SAS saying, well, we've got the solution to your problem, or you've got SAP saying, well, we've got business objects, or you've got Tableau, or any number of vendors claiming that they have the solution. IT does not have the solution to any problem. And in fact, if there was one word that I would like to ban in the context of IT, it's the word solution. Because that word gives, particularly on the business side, the impression that IT is going to bring the solution and solve the problem. All IT brings in addressing the problem is a capability. But there's also a requirement on the business side to bring a complementary capability. And together, they solve the problem. But again, I think in a lot of business managers, they sort of have the view that there's somehow a direct relationship between IT, digital, and business benefits. That somehow, if they deploy the technology on time, to budget, and it works, all the benefits that are expected will begin to flow. And just to back that statement up, what I see in my work with lots and lots of companies is they put, elaborate plans to get the technology in. IT professionals and IT project managers are great at building, nice Gantt charts, establishing milestones. But I would ask you, how many of you have ever built a plan to realize the benefits? What I would call a benefits realization plan. I would suspect very few of you have. And I know my latest research, a study right across Europe, indicated that less than 10% of European, quite large organizations actually build a plan that focuses on realizing the expected benefits from the investment in technology. The majority, 99.9% of organizations build plans to deploy the technology. And my message is there is no direct relationship between technology spend and benefits. Those benefits have got to be unlocked. So we've got to recognize that benefits cannot be delivered without change. So whatever digital investment we're making, the benefits that we expect cannot be delivered without change, and change without benefits won't be sustained. So if the users, for example, don't feel like getting any benefits, they're going to revert to the old way of working, use the old processes, not take into account all the new data that's available for making decisions. So that's the relationship between benefits and change. So as I said already, we need to rethink and reframe the digital challenge and to see it less about technology investments and more about investments and change. Investments that are becoming increasingly complex because technology now is not just providing an enabling capability to enable you to execute your strategy. It also provides a shaping. So it enables organizations, particularly strategically, to do things that are just not possible without technology. All you've got to do is think about the Internet of Things and some of the great innovative business models that throws up. These are business models that are just not possible without technology. So technology is no longer just an enabler, it's also a shaper. So before I introduce you to this tool, I just want to maybe just take you through its context. So let's say you're going to invest in a new digital technology, whatever that is, whether it's CRM, whether it's an ERP system, whether it's a new online shop or whatever. Generally, the vendor will take you to some reference sites, so you have some visits. You've always got to remember, even though the organization you're visiting might be in the same industry as you, might be a similar size, they have a different context, they have a different culture. They're going to have different processes, different people. The managers will have different mindsets. So whatever works there may not necessarily work in your organization. Secondly, change is a process. It's not something that happens overnight. So once you go live on Monday morning with a new digital investment, by Monday afternoon, that does not mean you have all the benefits. The benefits occur over a period of time. So essentially what we got is, we got the capabilities of technology enabling and shaping changes in the organization. Those changes you hope will deliver positive outcomes. We've got to remember, all projects have outcomes, but not all outcomes are benefits. Okay? So we want the positive outcomes then to help us achieve the benefits, and if we achieve the benefits, that will help us in satisfying the investment objectives. So that's sort of the logic, the disconnect. So we're investing down here in technology, looking for benefits and achieving investment objectives. And there's a bit in between that tends to be neglected. And this tool I'm going to introduce to you helps you better understand what often is neglected in relation to digital investments. And this tool is called the Benefit Dependency Network, and it's a tool that I developed with some colleagues over 20 years ago. So let me just introduce the logic behind the tool, and then I'll give you an example. So let's say one of our business drivers is to increase the return on capital employed. This is a typical business driver for a lot of companies. Now, just buying technology just doesn't move return on capital employed. You've got to do something. So how can you change and increase return on capital employed? Well, if you increase your profits. But again, buying technology doesn't increase profits. You've got to do something. Do something new, different, do something that you've always done but better, do something or stop doing something. So you're looking for certain benefits. So let's say if we increase sales volume, reduce our costs, improve our margins, that will help us increase profits. And then we maybe launch a sales drive, attract new customers, improve our marketing, improve our productivity. These are the things in green, these are the things that are going to give us the benefits. And then that might be enabled and shaped by technology. The point I'm trying to make here is that there is no direct relationship between the capabilities of the digital technologies, whether that's provided on-premise, whether we avail the services from the cloud. That technology just enables and shapes changes. And these changes then deliver in the benefits, and then the benefits then help us in achieving the investment objectives and meeting the business drivers. So that's the logic. Hopefully you kind of get a sense of what I'm talking about, because what I want to do is now build on that logic and introduce you to this tool, the Benefit Dependency Network. And what the tool really does is it links IT digital investments with expected benefits. So we got our drivers. So this is sort of the logic. We're going to have investment objectives. We're going to have benefits. We're going to have changes. And then we're going to have capability provided by the technology. You'll sort of see here, I've got two types of changes actually, sustaining and enabling changes. Now, when I developed the tool, I just used to call change. So I didn't distinguish between different types of changes. But some of the companies I was working with said they found it useful to make a distinction between the once-off change and the more ongoing changes. So when I talk about the enabling changes, these are the once-off changes. So, you know, coming up with a new process blueprint, for example, it's once-off. But the execution of that is more ongoing. Companies that I still work with today say, Joe, let's not confuse the issue. Let's just call change. So let me give you an example then of this tool in use. And it's a real example. It's a company that I worked with a number of years ago, and they were looking at rolling out Salesforce.com to support their new customer management, customer relationship strategy. I'd worked with the company before, and the CEO wanted to make sure that this investment delivered the expected benefits. So I worked with them on a number of aspects of the investment. One was helping them to build a network to really better understand what it is they would have to do as a business in order to realize any expected benefits. So let's start. So there was certain reasons they were going down the CRM route. I won't go into them, but I want to look at the investment objectives. And all I've got listed up here are 2 of what were 8 investment objectives. To improve the effectiveness of advertising and promotion spend, to increase the sales volume from new customers. Typical investment objectives for a CRM investment. We then said, okay, what are the benefits? And again, I think there was about a list of maybe 20 benefits. I've just listed 4 here for simplicity purposes. So again, reducing cost by avoiding waste on irrelevant customers, increasing the response rate of campaigns, etc., etc. Again, typical benefits that you would see on the business case for an investment in CRM. And this was relatively easy for them to do. This has then started to get quite difficult when we started to drill down, well, what would they need to do differently? What would they need to stop doing? What new things would they do? So over a period of weeks, we built up a network. So this network now, and this is just a partial network, the actual network itself was actually a lot bigger and a little bit more complex. But you can see here, these are the investment objectives, at least 2 of the investment objectives. These are the benefits that they were looking to be delivered from that investment. These were now all of the changes. So if this CRM investment was going to be successful, they would have to make all of these changes in their business. And then the final row, we can see the technology capability and how that was going to support both shape and enable these changes. So it probably gives you a glimpse as to why maybe some of your digital investments have struggled. Because if you don't understand before you start making the investment, before you kick off the project, all of the changes here that need to take place, the chances of delivering the benefits is greatly reduced. Now, so we can see, because it's a dependency network, we can see, for example, that if that change there doesn't happen, therefore there's going to be a knock-on consequences for this change here, because they're related, and if one doesn't happen, the other can't occur. Obviously, we're not going to get those benefits, and we won't get those benefits either. So we can also then, I would also advocate, what we also need to do is to assign benefit owners and measures. So it's not just a case of, you know, building the network. We need to say who is going to be the owners, and indeed, we also need to, for all of the changes that we've identified, who in the organization is going to be accountable. We need some evidence of achievement and some ideas of timescales. And you can probably see where I'm going with this, that if you can't find anybody who is going to be accountable for the change that you've identified, what's the likelihood of that change occurring? 0. So what do? You take it off the network. Okay, so when you take the change off the network, what does that mean? Well, because it's a dependency network, it impacts other changes, and the consequence is that maybe the business case will not stack up, because the benefits that you need to justify the investment will not be achieved. And the reason they won't be achieved is because some of the changes are unlikely to happen because nobody in the organization will become accountable. So the tool, I think, is quite a powerful tool. It's a tool that you can, use. You can explain it very, very quickly, particularly to your business colleagues. They get it. Now, the challenge is actually building the network. It's not easy. And I often get pushback when I work with clients, and they say, we really like the tool, but we just want to get on with the investment. We just want to get on with the project. My response to that is, well, if you don't put the effort in now, identifying all of the changes that are going to be necessary for that digital investment to deliver the expected benefits, I can guarantee that in 9 months, 18 months' time, we will be back here in this room sorting out the mess that could have been averted if we had put in the time today to identify the changes and get the accountable people behind those changes. A final point I'd like to make about the network is that when I developed it, it's sort of, I built it from right to left. You go back, work from the business drivers right the way through to the changes and the technology capability. But of course, how do people read? They read from left to right, okay? So what I would always advocate is that once you build a network, when you want to now present it, you don't want to give the impression that this investment is being driven by technology, because we know where that's going to go, okay? So you flip it around. So you flip it around and you present it like this. So we got your investment objectives, you got the benefits, the changes, the enabling changes, and the technology capability. And a lot of the companies that I've worked with, what they do is then they strategically position, a blow up of the network. And the reason they do that is really to highlight to business managers and business users that they might, in their mind, they might think that this is a digital technology investment. Actually, yes, there's some technology, but it's really a business investment, and the success of the investment is going to depend not so much on how well the technology is deployed. IT are good at that, but the success of the investment is going to depend on how well the changes are managed. So it really highlights on the business side their responsibility in ensuring the success of the digital investment. So that's a tool that hopefully you'll find useful in your work, and particularly in relation to the investments that you make in digital technologies, no matter what those investments are. Now, what I wanted to kind of do now my second objective is just to share with you some kind of recent research that I've been doing with some colleagues in the US, where we have been looking at some of the options that companies have in relation to digital transformation, but in particular, the different pathways that an organization can follow as it seeks to digitally transform itself. So what I've illustrated on the diagram on the screen here are two axes. On the one axis is customer experience, because the ultimate arbiter is going to be your customer. And today, a lot of companies are using NPS, Net Promoter Score, as a device to kind of measure customer experience, customer satisfaction. The customer's willingness to recommend our products, our services, our company to essentially to a friend. The other axis is operational excellence. Now, why is operational excellence important for digital transformation? The reason I believe that operational excellence is important is because in a digital world, the strategic options that we have to compete with are reduced. Okay? In the old sort of physical world, companies compete based on three premises. You either compete because you've got a better product or service. Yeah? The second way you can compete is because you've got really good relationships with your customers. And the third way was you compete because you were able to execute excellently, operational excellence. In the digital world, operational excellence, I believe, and my data is showing this, in the digital world, operational excellence is no longer a strategic choice. It's table stakes. You have to be operationally excellent. The customer expects that. You don't compete on that basis. You compete either because you've got a superior product or service, or you compete because you've got kind of deep insights and a deep relationship with your customer. They, in the digital world, they are the only two ways to compete. So operational excellence becomes table stakes. So it's critically important that you are operationally excellent. And of course, this is what we're seeing happening in lots of industries, particularly the likes of banking, insurance, for example, that has a lot of legacy. Yeah, that legacy is drawing down and is impacting their cost to income ratio. Yeah, they might be making, generating revenue, but the cost of, maintaining that is very, very high. Okay, because they're seeing fintechs come in with a completely new value proposition based around either the customer experience, based around a superior product or service, or deep customer knowledge. So these are the two axes, and the customer experience, whether you're industry average, industry leadership, industry laggard, and then your operational excellence, whether you're traditional, transitioning, or transformed. And these are sort of then the four positions, or sort of say the 6 positions. So let's take a look at one or two of them. Down here, this is where it's, it's siloed and spaghetti. And a lot of companies that I work with, that have pretty massive legacy investments, that's how you might describe it. It's siloed and spaghetti. You find these companies, this complex landscape of processes, systems, data, typically losing market share, and most of the IT spend is not on innovation, it's not on doing new stuff, it's just maintaining that legacy. Okay? And when things get done, it's often due to the heroics of people, particularly in the IT organization. If we go above, let's say in the fragmented and counter-integrated experience, so you can give the customer a great experience. So you can develop a great mobile app, for example, and customers love it. But you're not making any money. Why? Because the cost of actually delivering in that service is actually consumed by the cost of your operations. So this is why we've got to think about, moving away from this kind of more traditional over to a more kind of a transformed situation for our operations. And we obviously got to move from below average to above average in terms of our customer experience. So what the objective really is kind of to get up to the future ready state, where we're both innovative and low cost. We got this superior customer experience. We're modular, we're agile. We see data as a strategic asset. And also, we're ready as an ecosystem player as well. So, just to show you that the difference in performance, that there is real data behind this. So I've just taken out the middle, the transformed, the transitioning, just to show you some data, in terms of company performance. This again is some research that I did with some colleagues at MIT. And what we see is that 51% of the companies we surveyed were in this category. And actually, in terms of their margins, they were nearly just over 5% percentage points below industry average. Now, if we compare that to those that are either the transform or the industrialized or the future ready, at future ready, they were 16 percentage points above industry net margin. So the data is very, very clear that, depending on where companies position themselves, that seems to impact their performance. So it impacts their results. So when we then go out and talk to companies, see what they're doing, what we've identified are 4 pathways to future ready. Okay? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to maybe talk you through a couple of these pathways in the time that I have available. But And I suppose to provide some guidance, there's kind of a route map. So, first question that you need to ask is, where are you today? So you move right on path 1. That's the kind of the orange path. If your experience is okay, customer experience is okay, NPS is around average. That's your first path. But if you can't wait to improve your customer experience, so you're down in the traditional, the siloed and spaghetti, you have no choice. Your NPS, your customer is rating you below the industry average. You have to improve your customer experience. Yes, operations need to be addressed, but you've got to get your customer experience up, because if you don't, you'll be out of business. So if you can't wait to improve customer experience, but a few initiatives will make a big difference, again, what we find is path 3. So you kind of in let's say 100, 120-day cycles, you're addressing some of the operations, but you're also addressing at the same time some elements of customer experience. So what you're looking to do is, in tandem, you're looking to transition both the operation side, so these are your core operational systems, your systems of record, to take out all of the complexity, to simplify processes, while at the same time, you're looking to improve customer experience. And of course, if you assess that as an organization, your culture, your history is going to make embracing digital very, very difficult, you might choose pathway 4. And that's to set up a separate company. And this was a decision that the board of ING Bank made a number of years ago when they launched ING Direct. They said, listen, the bank has got so much legacy systems that's constraining what it can do in the future. There's also mindsets and the culture that's going to inhibit us becoming a successful digital bank. You know what we'll do? We'll just set up a separate organization and create a bank from scratch with none of the legacy. So these are sort of the pathway. Just to give you a glimpse, if we had longer together, I would go into a lot more detail into each of these pathways. But what I want to do is, in terms of kind of, I suppose, finishing off, is really to kind of highlight some of the capabilities that you need to start thinking about building. So in terms of the foundational capabilities, so if you're in the bottom left-hand quadrant, for example, there are some foundational capabilities. And these are about, the senior leadership team having the right conversations. Again, what I find in my research is that a lot of business leaders, board members, are what I would consider digitally illiterate. They don't have the language, they don't have the frameworks, and they don't have the mindset to have the value-adding conversations around digital. And this is a problem. This is a big, big problem. And this is, actually, it's often in these situations where I see companies hire chief digital officers. Yeah, because the chief digital officer is then going to drive the transformation of their company to digital. That is not the response. What we see is that digital is a team sport. And when I look at all of the companies that I've worked with, where they are on the process of digitally transforming themselves, the CEO sees him or herself as the chief digital officer. I'm thinking of Philips. If you go to Philips and you say, who's the CDO, they will point to the chief executive. If you go to DBS Bank in Singapore and you say, well, who's the chief digital officer of the bank, they will point to Paresh Gupta, who's the CEO. So that's a chief digital officer and making that choice, I think, is maybe one that companies should really reconsider. So that's part of that. You've got to measure digital, you've got to build a new infrastructure. The next point then, the operational excellence. So what supports operational excellence? Well, it's about automation, it's about simplification, it's about looking for consistency in your processes, standardized processes, simplifying work, simplifying procedures for your employees. So employee experience, and again, companies tend not to talk about employee experience, but employee experience is critical as well in delivering of a lot of services to customers. And that's a key part of your operational excellence. And then how do you then support customer experience? Well, that's obviously having a single customer experience goal. You're trying to deliver an omni-channel experience and then measure that. And you're trying to land successfully customer experience projects. And with the data that you collect, to generate deep customer understanding, which will enable you then to maybe foster closer relationships, but also then maybe to tailor some of your offerings to particular customer segments. Again, deepening your relationships with them. So these are just some of the capabilities, the critical capabilities. And just my kind of final few slides are just, again, just expanding on those. So if we look at the foundational capabilities, you know, maybe here are some questions for you to consider, for you to ponder. You know, how effective are you at coordinating at the ExCo, that's the senior leadership team level? You know, what about your business model, your operating model? Are they aligned? Are you allocating enough money in digital? Are you measuring the results and the performance, the benefits over time? And then are you investing in the right infrastructure? Again, when we look at the operational excellence, you know, so it's, as I've already said, it's implementing automation to re-engineer the core. So it's looking at simplification, taking out all of the complexity, looking at standardization. You're looking at, you know, service enabling kind of core business capabilities. You're looking at microservices. You're looking at APIs, for example. You know, looking at simplification projects to help employees. So looking to improve the employee experience. Maybe acquiring capabilities by partnering. So, for example, you know, one of the big challenges as you move maybe from on-premise to the cloud, using maybe different cloud providers, is interoperability. So maybe you might decide, well, we're going to partner not just with cloud providers to deliver in the functionality that we need in order to drive the changes in our organization, but also maybe partner with someone who's going to help us with the interoperability, for example, if we don't have it. And then it's about measuring cost and performance. You know, are we, you know, as efficiently as we are, as we need to be, as we could be? And then in terms of the capabilities that support business excellence. So how effective are you at, you know, focusing the company around a single customer experience goal, for example? Building omni-channel competencies. Implementing significant customer experience projects. Developing your deep knowledge of your customer. Measuring customer experience. If you can't answer those sort of questions in a positive way, that may mean that you have certain weaknesses in the capabilities that your business will require in order to improve the customer experience and indeed to impact that net promoter score. So, if I was to sort of maybe look to wrap up and give you some takeaways, I think the first one is that you just cannot analyze your way to the future. You often need to reinvent it. And I think that's an important point to note in relation to digital. It's, you know, particularly at the digital strategy level, it's not about, you know, analyzing and then trying to, you know, predict and move on to the future, because that cannot often be possible. You often have to reinvent the future. The competitive evolution is no longer linear. It's exponentially. So it's a little bit like, you know, if you're a candle manufacturer, you know, now moving into that kind of electricity world. All of the skills, the competencies, the capabilities, the IT that made you successful as a manufacturer of candles are probably not the capabilities that are going to make you successful when you get into the electricity world. You've got to frame digital conversations around digital engagement with customers, creating digitized solutions, smarter employees and processes, new lines of business. And again, I go back to my point that operational excellence is no longer a strategic choice. So you've got to relentlessly simplify the operating core. Take out all of that cost, all of that clutter. That's table stakes today. And then finally, you know, ambition to growth may not be the problem. The biggest hurdle may stem from an inability to catalyze the organization into action. Remember, transformation is a journey. Okay, transformation is a journey. You've got to see digital as investments in change, and remember that culture and mindsets are your enemy. So hopefully that's sort of giving you a kind of a glimpse of digital transformation. It is kind of an ongoing journey that's been happening for decades in companies. But as I highlight at the outset of my presentation, I think there are some fundamental shifts around real-time data, connectivity, experimentation, for example, that really distinguish today's era from, let's say, even 10 years ago. And I think that's what's accelerating the interest and indeed the opportunities in this digital space. So hopefully I've sort of given you at least a tool, the Benefit Dependency Network, that you can sort of take away and maybe use for your next digital investment. And then the kind of the glimpse I gave you of our, you know, again, because it's early sight of some kind of recent research we're doing, kind of that there are different pathways. So there's no one way to digitally transform your organization. You've got to recognize where you're starting from, for example. But what I think that kind of the pathways do highlight are the particular capabilities that you need to develop. So as you increasingly look to become more digital, for example, the capabilities in terms of the operational side, in terms of the customer experience that you need to start thinking about developing and embedding in your organization. And that's not going to be easy. But as in, you know, in this kind of digital world, I think nothing is easy. And I'm sure probably, I know this is the 20th anniversary, we could be here at the 30th anniversary, and we will probably be having the same sort of conversations. So and thank you for your attention, and I look forward to talking to some of you over the duration of today and tonight.